Gary, this is old Don Falls from Coos Bay, Oregon. You wanted me to send you this tape. I'll see if I can remember some of these guys' names and places, but I didn't think I'd ever forget them, but some of them are slipped my mind. But I'll give it a try. I was in the National Guard, and we were called up in September of 1940. We were supposed to go up for a year. We were stationed at the mouth of the Columbia River at Fort Stevens. Before we got our year served, President Roosevelt passed a bill, and our time was extended to another 15 months. Of course, before we got that 15 months in, Pearl Harbor came along, and we were stuck forever after that. Being stationed at Fort Stevens, we became the only Army post in the United States to receive enemy fire during World War II. It was, I don't remember exactly what the date was, but this Jap sub fired on our base. We were on 10-inch disappearing Seacoast guns, and this Jap had us zeroed in. He fired 9 rounds at us and never missed. In fact, we had a thing that went across our gun emplacement there. It says, 9 shots fired, 9 shots missed. To hell with HIROHITO. But anyhow, after that, I transferred into the for paratroop training. Went to Fort Benning, Georgia, of course, like most of us. And from there, we went to Camp McCall in North Carolina. And I don't know how long we was there. Then they took a bunch of men, I don't know how many, and they were trying to form a cadre for a new division. They took mess sergeants and supply sergeants and all kinds of men, and they sent us to Florida, Fort Blanding or something like Camp Blanding, I guess, but it was the biggest infantry training post in the United States at the time. And they sent us down there to help recruit new volunteers into the paratroops. And we made quite a few jumps while we was there for war bond deals and this kind of thing. We really had a soft, easy racket. And anyhow, loved every minute of it. Then they transferred us back to Fort Benning, and they didn't start this new division that they were going to start. And they took this whole group that I was in, and they transferred us over to England. And when we got to England, that's when I got into the 21st. You wanted to know how much glider training that I received. I didn't really receive any glider training. The only thing I know about them was before we were to go into Holland, the pilots would take a guy and make him a co-pilot and tell him how to land his thing and never try to dodge anything. That's the only thing I know about gliders, except I didn't like them. How much artillery training did you get? I really didn't get any. I bluffed my way into being a forward observer because I knew they parachuted in and didn't ride the dumb old gliders. And but I did have coast artillery, and I understood the basics of field artillery. I didn't go in there to endanger anybody. I knew what I was supposed to do. And early training days in the United States, well, I don't know, I made everything fun. I played hard and I worked hard, and I wasn't the ideal soldier. I probably was late more than anybody, and but I did enjoy my training pretty good. And the boat trip to England, why, it was uneventful. A lot of guys got sicker than dogs, but I made out all right in that problem. And we were at sea for 13 days. And let's see, what did you think of your officers and your outfit? My outfit was great as far as I was concerned. Short time I was with them. Officer, that was something else again. We had a commanding officer that had, excuse my French, but shit in his neck. He led us into a spot in Holland that we were about 6 or 8 or 10 miles from where we should have been, and we got this hell shelled out of us. And our captain got the guys out of there. They were all in ditches and everywhere else. Gave them march orders, got us out of there, and took us back to where we belonged. And this colonel got a silver star for this goof up. That I didn't like. Then we had an officer, and I can't remember his name. He was a forward observer officer, and he was an Italian. That's all I can remember about the guy. And we finally, in Holland, I think there was 4 or 5 of these forward observing parties that they all refused to go out with this guy. And one of the reasons, when the last time I went out with him, we were in a basement of this church, and he gave a fire mission that had time firing, which you have to observe to adjust. And he did it from this basement. It was just a canned deal. He knew the Krauts was out in that area, so he just up and did her. And it was cases like this that, and anyhow, I understood they had asked us about this, and we told them what we thought. They transferred this hay shaker back to the States. That's the only punishment he got out of this deal. But anyhow, that's all I can remember about that part of it. Well, here's that to me about Whatcom Farms. We stayed in the stables, and that's about all I can remember about that. I joined the 321st just as they come back from Normandy. Filled up the ranks in that outfit. That's when I went to Whatcom Farms, and we actually weren't in England very long, and we went into Holland, so I really can't tell you too much about it. And you want to know about the training we got there? Well, I didn't get much training anywhere there that I thought of. And you want to know my particular job? Well, I was a forward observer. And I don't know if I associated with the British soldiers. Well, not really. Not that I wouldn't have, but I had no problems with them. And no, I didn't visit with any of the locals or stay with them. And what type of working relationships did I have with the paratroopers? I probably got drunk with them if I ran into them. Yeah, I was recognized as a full member of the 101st. And no, I don't recall the patch job. I just can't remember that about the Airborne strip. Seemed like it was always on there as far as I was concerned. And about associating with any of the guys from the 321st, no, I don't keep in contact with any of them. And was I anxious to get into the fight with the Germans? Nah, I was more of a lover than a fighter, but I was glad I could do it. And about the 75s, they did a hell of a good job. Really did. And I thought they were probably just as good as the British 105s. And of course, all this stuff about Normandy, I can't tell you anything about that, being I wasn't there. Back in England again, you recall a warrant officer that mistook money. Well, yeah, I remember that real good. And but I always thought it was dogs he was betting on instead of the ponies. He wasn't too popular, I remember. Well, I couldn't see much difference in the guys when we come back to England. The paratroopers and all those guys, we were all fine. Well, you're asking about my glider training and all this junk. Like I said, it didn't have much of it. Before we went into Holland, they had 2 dry runs. First, I think we were supposed to go into Belgium. I think that's where it was. And then next, they overran that part of it, so we didn't go in there. Then they were going to go into France, and I think Patton overrun that. We didn't go in there. They canceled that mission. Then we actually went into Holland. And like I say, I had just been in the 321st a short time. And when we were supposed to go in on the first Belgium deal, the first sergeant listed on the bulletin board the names of the guys that were going to go in each glider. And the guys that were going to stay in rear echelon and this, that, and the other. And my name didn't appear anywhere. I don't know why. I guess maybe because I hadn't been in there that long. And anyhow, went to mess that night, and I was telling this sergeant about it. And he said, asked me if I'd ever fired a machine gun. And I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm short a man in my glider. You want to go with me? I said, sure, that'd be fine. So I went down there, and I was going to go in their glider, and that's when we went down and got our instructions how to fly one of these things if we had to. And then they canceled that mission, and the same thing went on when we were supposed to jump into France. My name didn't appear anywhere, so I went over to the sergeant and asked him if I was still welcome, and he said, sure. So there again, I was scheduled to go with him. Then they canceled that job out, and then we were going to go into Holland. And it was the same thing. I was going to go with this glider. And that evening, before we were to go in, this Lieutenant Brooks, I think he joined the 321st the same time I did as a cadre. And he come down to the tent I was in and wanted to know if I was a forward observer. And I said, yeah, I was. Told him a little white lie, but because I knew he was a paratrooper and a forward observer officer, and like I said before, I knew they jumped, and I wouldn't have to ride in this old glider. So he said, well, I'd like you to join my forward observing group. He said, there's a corporal here that is refusing to jump. And he said, I don't want anybody that's got any doubt in their mind when we go into combat. So that's how I got into the there, and so I didn't ride a glider into Holland, and I understood that the glider that I was supposed to go on had its tow rope shot off over Belgium, and these guys were all captured. In fact, we overrun a prisoner of war camp just before the war ended, and one of these guys was in there. I don't know, couldn't tell you his name now. But that was my dealing as far as gliders are concerned in Holland. And let's see, what else do you want to know here? No. Well, what did I think of the British soldiers? I don't know. It seemed to me that they stopped for tea a lot. And like when we jumped in Holland, the British were supposed to take off from Belgium and take this town from one side. We used to take it from the other and meet in the middle, and we held this area for 3 days before they got there. I guess they got the hell shot out of them. I don't remember now, but anyhow, we never kind of forgive them for that. And what are the German soldiers? They were good, well-trained men. Yeah, we encountered them pretty close. And what else you want here, Gary? Yeah, just this one guy you want to know about. If I know anybody that was captured by the Germans. And like I say, he got out okay. No, I didn't worry too much about being captured with German souvenirs. I scrounged anything and everything I could get. Yeah, I took a few pictures. I'll see if I can find them and send them to you. And the Dutch civilians, oh man, yeah, they were great. They thought we were the nicest thing in the world. And while we were there, port observers, they'd go up to the front for 3 to 6 days, and then they'd be relieved. And another group would go up, and when you were back at your guns, you didn't have any duties whatsoever. So the 3 of us guys went over and made friends with these civilians. They were brothers and sisters, and we thought they were old. They were probably in their 50s. And we'd steal crap out of the mess tent, take over there to them, and we had lots of meals with them, and we'd sit around and BS. And we become real good friends. In fact, I corresponded with these people for years after I got home. They're all dead now. And anyhow, well, I already told you about my officer leadership in this mission. They had one guy, though, that was, I can't remember his name, but he was a dandy guy to be with. That Brooks was great. He was a damn good. Shared his liquor ration with us. One thing I remember about him. He didn't drink. Yeah, contact with the paratroopers of the 506. Yeah, you bet. We were there quite often with them. As far as them, how did they respond to us guys being artillerymen? Yeah, they were glad to see us. Real glad to see us, you know. We don't have no problems there. You want to know if I brought any souvenirs back, and what were they? And I still have this stuff. It's, I brought back a German Luger, which is an exceptionally good one. All serial numbers match. It's got the regular GI holster. It's got the tool, the tear-down tool, extra clip. And like I say, all serial numbers match, would make it a pretty valuable gun. And I brought back a Czech 9mm. It's built just exactly like the American 45. And it's got the German ordnance stamp 2 or 3 places on it. And armbands. Well, I sent you pictures of a lot of this stuff, Gary, that I brought home. Well, what do I remember about the 70 days in Holland? It was pretty good. There at the end, it was kind of where we were at. It was kind of you don't shoot at us, we won't shoot at you situation, and it wasn't that too tough a duty. No, I've never been back after the war, but I would certainly have liked to go back someday and look at things. The thing that I remember most about Holland was the fact that the kids wore wooden shoes and the windmills. I thought this was all fairy tales, but it's a true thing. Yeah, you're asking about Bastogne. That was a miserable deal, I'll tell you, and it's like you say, most of the guys remember a great deal about it. It's something we will never, ever forget, I'm sure. And the cold, like you say, I understand we lost more boys with frozen feet than we did from the Germans. They told us knows how to take care of our feet, but sometimes if you're stuck in a foxhole, you can't get out. And it was a sad deal. Yeah, the lack of ammunition and the lack of food, it was a bad deal. Before going into Bastogne, we'd been up on the lines in Holland for, I don't know, 2.5 months. I don't know how long it was. It seemed like it was forever. Then they moved us down to Reims, France. And we were supposed to get resupplied with our whatever ammunition and things we needed and fill up the ranks again with men. But this didn't come to pass. They didn't get around to doing all that stuff before they trucked us out to Bastogne. That was why we had such a shortage when we got there, and it was a problem. We went into Bastogne in big old cattle truck kind of things, and as we was getting into Bastogne, infantrymen were standing alongside the roads and begging ammunition from the cooks and bakers or whoever wasn't going to be on the front lines. This was why we had a big problem up there. After we were in Bastogne, I think maybe a day and a half or something, we started getting artillery fire from the backside. And we kept thinking it was our artillery firing short on us. We were kind of upset about that. Finally, we found out what our predicament really was, that the Krauts had surrounded us completely, cut off our medics and our quartermaster coming up, and that we were in a kind of a tight spot. In the town of Bastogne, there was a printing press, and they printed out a newsletter and distributed it to all the troops. And they told us just exactly what our problems were, and why we weren't getting air support, and the whole problem we had. Also the fact that the Germans had asked our general to surrender to him, and he told them nuts. He wasn't going to do this. I mean, we knew all this, so we knew we had a problem. But nobody figured that this was it, like you asked me in here. We all knew that we were the best damned outfit in the Army, and if it was going to be held, we could do it. And that's just the way everybody felt, I think, and we proved to be right. But it was a sad one. Glad I don't have to go through that again, ever, or anybody else, for that matter. General Patton and his outfit got the big hero button for breaking through the German line to us and leaving us up there. Don't get me wrong, but we were certainly glad to see Patton's group. But the guys that saved our butts was the Air Corps. Dropping supplies into us, for one thing, and their fighter planes that just actually destroyed the German army. They just wiped out their trucks, their tanks, and anything that was moving, they got. One supply drop that come over our outfit, I think it was Christmas Day maybe, I saw this little tiny parachute coming down, went out and got it, and it was a fruit cake. And it said, tag on there said, Merry Christmas from the guys from the Happy Goose. Never will forget that. Still don't like fruitcake though. You're asking me if I was dug in around Savvy. I don't recall the name of this place, but one thing I can tell you, I could dig a foxhole faster than any guy in Europe. That's why I got my butt down and didn't get wounded. But this particular area, I don't recall. Sorry about that. You're asking me about any of my buddies getting wounded. Yeah, lots of them got that. One guy in particular by the name of Hunter, I recall very well. When we were in Holland, the British tank outfit moved on ahead of us into this town. About 3 or 4 hours later, these tanks come right back down this highway towards us, had their hatches open and the tams on their head that they wore. But the Germans had captured these tanks, and they just drove them back in there. And when we were all in the ditches alongside this road, and they started flipping hand grenades out at us. And Hunter got one, and he got 22 pieces of shrapnel from his heels to the top of his head, and none of them serious. I mean, they were not good, but I mean, they were really, really in there. And he come back from the hospital in about 3 weeks. He wasn't back 3 days when he got a piece of mortar, hit him in the throat, and he almost drowned in his own blood. It pierced his windpipe a little bit. And that hospitalized him, and he wasn't gone very long again, and he was back with us. And then I can't remember whether it was Bastogne or southern France, but we were going into this old house. A mortar shell come into the yard, and a piece of shrapnel hit his entrenching shovel and pierced his old cheek of his butt, and that didn't hospitalize him. The medic took his knife and flicked it out, a piece of shrapnel. But then when we was down in southern France, this Lieutenant Brooks that you were talking about got hit. And Hunter and I were taking him down to this aid station. And when we got shelled again real bad, and Hunter got hit in the leg. And it was a nasty one. Didn't break the leg, but it went clear through the leg, upper part of his leg. And so I left Brooks there, because he wasn't hurt as bad, and got Hunter down to the aid station. Poor old Hunter figured the family jewels was gone, you know, and because there was so much blood and stuff. And I wouldn't have doubted it myself looking, but anyhow, I tore his pants on up and took a look, and everything was hanging like they should be, you know. But he wouldn't believe me. Every aid man that come by, he'd ask, and anybody come by, he'd ask, and they'd all gaze in there and reassure him that he was okay. But after he got back to the outfit, he told me it was a week and a half before he got up enough nerve to feel down there for himself and see if everything was intact. He just thought we was trying to make him feel good, I guess. But he was an unfortunate guy, and I would certainly like to know where in the hell he is now. Gary, this side of the tape is about ready to run out, so I guess I'll start maybe singing a song or something until we can use it up before I start BSing again to you. Better not, I'll just let it run out. How's that? I'm up in Holland that I just happened to remember that maybe you'd be interested in. Holland was no picnic by long means. I jumped in with the infantry 2 days before you guys come in your gliders. And so I got to watch you all circle in and land, and very interesting. Some of the guys in their gliders would follow the lead glider in big circles, and they got screwed up and went over on the other side of the Niederrhein River. Once in a while, one of the guys in this group would see that was wrong and pull away and come over and land in this field where they were supposed to. And when we jumped, they maybe brought in 6 gliders, and they had jeeps in them for the higher ranked officers. And we were running to get to this assembly area where we were so we could move out after we landed and got out of our chutes. There was a plot of trees there, maybe an acre or so, and we were running up the edge of these trees, and these 2 gliders were coming in. was drumming in perfect, and the other one was over the little bit of woods a bit, and he turned, and when he did, he turned right into the side of this other glider, and they come right down, oh gosh, 50 feet from us, and killed the boys in the gliders. All they had was a pilot and co-pilot on them, but the jeeps broke loose when they hit, and they were killed. That's one thing I remember about Holland. Another thing was the 101st held all their ground that they were supposed to hold, their bridges and their highways and everything. And as history tells us, the British Airborne outfit, they couldn't get across their bridge, and they never did until the war was over. And that's why that mission wasn't very successful. One time in the town of Best, the Germans made a big attack on us, and they had lots and lots of armored and lots of infantry, and I was in this forward observing party. We had 96 artillery pieces zeroed in on this sector. There was all the 101st had to offer, and British, I don't know what the hell, 108s or I forget what caliber artillery pieces they had, but they were all zeroed in on this area. And we'd start firing, and they'd roll it clear on out as far as we could, and then bring it right back up almost to our own lines, and roll it back again. And they fired these 96 guns for about 40 to 45 minutes. And the guys at the guns they was running out of shells, and they were shooting any tank and smoke and anything they had at their disposal out there. And then when they lifted that, the infantry got up and moved ahead, and they were just hundreds and hundreds of these German boys that were, the concussion had got them so badly. They were bleeding from their ears and stuff, and man, that was a terrible, terrible deal to be under, I know, but I was glad we were on the end pointing it instead of receiving it. Another thing that happened in Holland, like I said before, a lot of gliders went over on the other side of the Nether Rhine River, and over the years there, while there was pilots that got shot down, there were there was pilots shot down, and all kinds of people over on the other side of this Nether Rhine River. In fact, there was 129 of them. This one night, Lieutenant Brooks, I was sleeping in a shed. He come over and woke me up and asked me if I could swim, and I said yes. And he said, well, come on, we're going on a mission. So he got myself and Hunter, and the three of us went, and we got into this deal, and the British engineers had these aluminum boats. They were going to go across and bring these people back across. Before they started, they had a boat on each end of this thing that had forward observers in it. We were in one side of it. And we went across and set up on the other side of there. And there again, we had these 98 guns zeroed in on this area in case we had problems. Fortunately, we never had to use them, but anyhow, they got these boats in and got over there, and when we were going over, just got out in the middle there, and one of those screaming Mimi rockets they had, one of those 12, I think they shot 12 rockets at a time electrically, fired them off electrically, lit up the whole damn river when it went off, but they never saw us, thank goodness. Anyhow, they got these 129 guys loaded up and back over across the river, and then we got to come back over. But in the meantime, these guys that were back over on the other side, some of them thought they were in downtown London. I guess they were so happy to get over there, and they'd lighting cigarettes and bullshitting, and thought we'd never get up over there. Coming back, well, this limey engineer was in charge of steering this thing. You paddled them just like an old canoe, and we come back across that river in circles, And Hunter, every time that he'd take a stroke, he'd say, "Straighten this out, you limey son of a bitch. Straighten this son of a bitch out." Anyhow, we finally made it across. Pulled the boats up over this dike and got out of that area. And we just got out of there quite a ways, and the Germans got suspicious and started shooting up flares and spotted these boats and mortared the hell out of them. But we were all gone out of there, so it didn't make much difference there. Anyhow, that was a kind of a spooky deal to go across on, but we had no problems whatsoever. And we got my Ford Observing outfit, we got the hero button for that little maneuver. In fact, we were awarded Bronze Star. I don't know why for that one, but because we had been in tougher spots and would be in tougher ones later on. But I was glad to get it. I got it hanging on my wall. Well, you was asking about Birch's Garden. That was a fun trip into Birch's Garden. We moved in there about 4 or 5 days before the war ended. I don't remember exactly when. Didn't run into much opposition at all. One of the things I do remember is Hitler's SS troops barracks was halfway up this Alp. Had a wine cellar in it. And it was loaded with wines and cognacs and you name it, the stuff that they'd looted all over Europe. And we got in there and we'd load each other up and like firewood we were carrying. And we'd pack it out to wherever our place was and come back and get another load. Yeah, we stayed drunk for 3 weeks. That was pretty good duty there. But, well, maybe not 3 weeks, but quite a while. Then, what kind of loot did I get there? Well, that pewter or silver stuff, Gary, I sent you pictures of, is about all I got out of Birch's Garden. And, but one thing that was kind of interesting there was, I was talking to this lady in downtown Birch's Garden, and all these children come by, and they had ladies in nun, I don't know whether they're nuns or not, but they had this type of garb on that were with these children. And there maybe was 50 of them at least, and it was all the same heights and shapes. And anyhow, this lady told me that this was Hitler's super race that he was breeding. And I understand that he had his SS troops there that were all hand-picked men. They had to be certain heights and weight and color and IQ and everything. Well, these girls had to pass the same type of physicals, and then they could go down the ranks and pick out a man and live with him until they got pregnant, and then they were turned over to the state. And when they had their baby, they turned the baby over to the government, and they could go down the line and pick out another one if they felt like it, or could go home. They had done their duty. Often wondered what happened to this bunch of little guys. They're all, 60 years old now, I guess. But it would have been kind of interesting to know. And what else did you want here? About this black Frenchman that you're talking about. No, I didn't see him. But didn't see much of anything there for a little while when in Birch's Garden because of that damn wine. I remember that there was a cavalry outfit that surrendered to us, and they had all these horses there, and these German PWs would groom these horses. We could take them and go for rides and bring them back, and they'd dress them down and take their saddles off, and do whatever they needed. And this colonel that I was talking to you about earlier, he sent 3 of them home, these horses, and I forget what it was, a terrible, terrible high price it cost him to ship these things home. And we had a couple of cowboys in the outfit, and they said that they were just cold horses. They wouldn't have given them $100 for them back in the States. So maybe he got his screwed good, which is great. thing, the streams coming off these Alps were just ice cold, and they were full of these German brown trout. Civilians couldn't fish. They were saved for the high mucky muck Germans, I guess, Hitler and his buddies. And, but when we moved in there, the guys would find a big hole and toss hot hand grenades in there, blow them up and get downstream and pick up these fish that he had killed. We'd have big fish fries. Then one guy from another outfit used a German grenade and it went off prematurely, and I don't remember whether it hurt or killed or what, but anyhow, there's big bulletins come out. We couldn't do that anymore. And we killed an old chamois or something like that, goat-like looking rig. Took it down and had this German woman cook it for us, and I never tasted anything so rotten in my life. This old German said we got the hide too close to the meat. That was why it tasted like goat, I'll tell you. Wasn't any good. Well, that's about it, Gary. Another thing about going into combat into Holland, when we got lots and lots of flak and going in, and we were stood up and hooked up in position, and I was the last man in the lineup to go out, and I heard this funny noise, and I crouched down looking out the window to see. It sounded like one of the engines had got it. And I looked back up, and this noise I heard was the guy's static line sliding down this cable. And half of them were already out the door, and I had to run like hell and to jump out to make sure I got out at the same time they did. I remember that. And as I was going down, I thought to myself, what in the hell are you doing here? And it was kind of spooky to going into combat and not knowing anybody. Didn't have a close buddy in the whole group. And recognized a few faces, but that was it. Other than that, I had a pretty good time over there. Had lots of leave, and it, like I say, I'm glad it's over, and I hope our sons don't have to do the same. I hope this helps you, Gary, with your book. I don't know, it's a lot of crap, but maybe you can get something out of it. Okay, Guy, and thanks for keeping in touch with me. See you around. Just sitting here listening to this tape, and I come to the conclusion that I'd never make a radio announcer. But anyhow, I thought of a couple other things that were kind of interesting. I thought one thing that always stuck in my craw was after we got relieved in Holland, we went by truck convoy from Holland to Reims, France. And we was about halfway there, and the word come down the ranks that the Red Cross mobile trucks were going to meet us. And we pulled into this great big huge field with a big area. And there must have been 8 or 10 of these donut wagons. And they was all around the edge of this big field. And they had their music playing, and the Red Cross gals was there. And then we unloaded and piled out. But we had to pay for those damn donuts. And that it still sticks in my craw to this day. Maybe it shouldn't, but it does. Then we got back to, and finally got to France. And a couple of nights after we were there, the big bulletin, USO show was going to be on that night. And the guys lined up for blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks to go see this entertainment. Got in there, and it was elderly ladies or middle-aged ladies, I don't know, from the States, and they played light opera, kind of an orchestra thing, the cellos and the violins and the piano, and it was good music, but it certainly wasn't what the guys expected to give. And it wasn't very nice of us, but some of the guys in the back started blowing up rubbers, and they bounced them forward and forward until they finally got them up on the stage, and they closed the curtain and kicked us all out. A couple nights later, they had another U.S. show, and they brought in a bunch of girls from, local girls, I guess, and they put on a good show for us. That's just something else I remember. What else? The outfit I was in after I finished jump school, they gave us a radio test or a sound test, or I don't know what you call it, to see if we could be radio people. And they put earphones on us, and they gave you a questionnaire there, and they'd send out Morse code, did-ot, and then they'd go did-ot. The first sound sounded like the second sound, well, you'd make a check there. Anyhow, I got a real high score on this, and so they sent me to radio school. I don't know how long I was there, quite a while. And you had to finally be able to receive and send 85 words a minute, which we accomplished, but never ever used it after we got into combat. And then we went to this camp call, and that was a crazy, wild bunch of young hayshakers there, I'll tell you. Anyhow, one of the records we held while I was there, we were 3 times higher than any colored outfit for venereal disease. Now that's not nothing to brag about, but this was a fact. It held our outfit from going overseas 3 times in a row. And the last time it happened, we had this little banty rooster colonel got out there and make a big speech and said, the next man that turns in with a venereal disease, if he's a married man, I'm personally writing a letter to his wife. If he's single, I'm writing a letter to his mother. Dismissed. Of course, the guys didn't slow them down, and they just went in town and got their treatment. They didn't report in with it. But they say, like I say, that's one record we're not too proud of, but it was a fact. And I wasn't one of them. I was a good boy, nice clean kid. Anyhow, other than that, I can't think of a thing now anymore, Gary. I'm going to go to bed, and maybe in the morning I'll find out something else and rattle on this tape for you. Hate to waste your tape and you spent your hard-earned money on it. So I'll see you later, guys. Night. Good morning, Gary. I thought of a couple of more things that I should bitch and bellyache about. Maybe it's not interesting to you, but it's some things that have bugged me forever. One of them was, when the war was over, they sent the guys home according to points. The more points you had, the sooner you went home. I was fortunate enough to get high points and one of the first guys to come home. But what bothered me was this, that if you had received a medal of any kind, Bronze Star or Purple Heart or whatever, it had counted 2 points. Well, they started passing out the Bronze Star to officers like they were Cracker Jacks, just so they would get to come home. I mean, some of these guys are rear echelon people that had never heard a bullet, let alone... And anyhow, they did a good job, I guess, but they weren't entitled to a Bronze Star as far as I was concerned. What it did was cheapen the medal for the guys that had actually won one. Anyhow, that's one of my gripes. Another thing that bothered me was the way they treated guys that were wounded when they were discharged. They were paid off according to rank. I mean, if a buck private got his leg blowed off, he got so much money according to his pay. And if it was a major, he got the same treatment, only his was twice as much money. And that never did seem fair to me either. But that's the way the Army played their games. Oh, anyhow, is that enough belly aching, or should I go on? After the point system was all figured out, they shipped guys from our outfit with the highest points down to southern France, and we waited for a ship to take us home. I think it was about a 3-week delay there while we were just laying around. And then we finally got aboard this boat, and they paid us just before we got aboard, so everybody had a few bucks on them. And that's when the card games and the crap games come out. And man, I never seen so much money changing hands in my life. They were playing dice up on the deck, and it was kind of windy, and this one guy was holding the bets so the wind wouldn't blow him away, and he got a percentage of the take every time. And he had parachute pants on with the big pockets on the legs, and by the end of the day he couldn't hardly get another buck down in those things, and he'd made so much money. In one game I watched, it was a high roller, and this guy had won it, and he'd been winning quite a bit, but he won this particular pot, and he grabbed a handful of $1 bills and went over to the edge of the ship and threw them overboard. He wanted to get them out of the game. It was slowing this game down too much. And this one fella won 38,000 bucks, and he quit. And he hired these 4 guys to watch him, guard him, till we got home. He didn't want to put it in the ship's safe so they would have records of this. He said he was going to go buy a chicken farm. I don't know whether he ever did or not. But anyhow, our trip home was uneventful other than that, and we landed in Boston, and then they took the guys from Oregon and Washington and divided us from the California people. Then they flipped a coin to see who got to fly home and who got to ride the train home. Unfortunately, the guys from Oregon and Washington, we had to ride a train. And they were boxcars that had bunks in them. And I don't know how many guys, quite a few guys in one of those boxcars. And we had a major that was in charge of ours. And when we got aboard, he gave us a little talk, and he said, you guys aren't supposed to be drinking on this trip home. He said, but if you do, he said, I won't say anything. But he said, the only thing I ask is when I tell you to stop, I want you to quit, because we're going to be coming into someplace and my ass will be grass. So we did that. And he let us drink until we got clear to Fort Lewis, Washington. And about 5 hours before we got there, he asked us to get rid of the stuff, so we did. And but that was a good trip home too. And I don't know, we were there for about, I don't know how many days, 4 or 5 days, I guess, and they got all our paperwork in order and discharged us. And I come back to good old Coos Bay and married my old childhood sweetheart. We'd been going together since the 8th grade. And anyhow, we got married and had 5 kids. Lived happily ever after. Now I'm going to quit, Gary. I'm going to BS you anymore. Toodles.
Well, that's it. That's the entire tape, both sides, Jim.